All right, we are live.
Hello.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Let's see.
How are we all doing?
Hopefully there are people there. I'm not getting any comments yet.
I'm sure there will be.
Oh, it just popped up. So
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Do we all want to share our channels? Hannah, if you want to go first.
Yes. I'm Hannah Blackwell, and I have a booktube channel where I talk about fantasy primarily and romance and a little bit of everything, but mostly fantasy and romance and fantasy romance. And sometimes I read like a thriller or a horror or whatnot, but I do a TBR game usually on my channel where I play Once Upon a TBR game. And that's how I pick my books, but I don't guarantee I will read them. And sometimes I do sprints, but mostly it's just kind of like the regular, normal booktube type of content. And yeah, that's it.
Hi, Jane.
Isa?
Yeah, cool. So, I'm Isa from the channel Fan Fantasy Books, which is a little corner of the internet. Well, I mainly review fantasy books. I do book reviews, recommendations, top tier list, occasional book hauls, but I always regret it because why I do that. And sometimes I do, same as Jess, some book recaps so that you guys can skip the rereads. So that's mainly what I do. And what about you, Tori?
my name is Tori. My channel is Novel Life, but on Instagram I'm Live a Novel Life because Novel Life was taken. But I primarily read romance, all types of romance, all types of tropes, genres of romance. I'm reading more fantasy romance in February just because it's Pharaoh Feb, but yeah, that's pretty much all I do. I do recommendation videos, series review videos, all types of stuff like that.
And I'm Jess from Honest Fiction, and I mostly read fantasy romance and then also contemporary romance, dark romance, forbidden romance, all of that fun stuff. And same thing as everyone else, just like wrap ups, TBRs, and then recaps. So let's talk about From Blood and Ash. What do you guys think?
Okay, who starts?
Well, when I first read this book, it was less than a year ago, and I gave it 4 stars. I was a big fan. I think it was like a good 4 stars. And I had a good time with it. I was really surprised by it. I didn't think it was going to go in the direction it was going to go. I was expecting something completely different. And I was pleasantly surprised by that. And I'm still like working on my reread of it, but I still remember everything because I read it still recently enough. But yeah, I really enjoyed it.
And then what about you, Isa?
So I loved it the first time that I read it. I think like from the moment when I read A Court of Thorns and Roses, I don't believe that I read a book that grabbed me as much as From Blood and Ash in terms of fantasy romance and like just really wanted to binge that series, right? And that book. And that feeling remained this time with a reread. But this time around, I'm maybe because I love like what happens more with Seda and Niktos, maybe. I'm not sure. It felt a little bit like not as good. So for me now, I think it's kind of like a 3.5, 4. I mean, well, the first time was a 5. It's still like really, really, really liked it, but I kind of like see it this way on, okay, there's stuff that, you know what I mean? I'm not being like super descriptive, but I hope you do know what I mean.
We'll get into it.
Yeah, we will.
So this was like my 4th time rereading it, I think.
Really?
Yeah. I read it quite a bit. So I read it in 2020. It was right after I read ACOTAR. I got into fantasy romance. I think this is like after ACOTAR, this was one of the first fantasy romance series I read. So it's very like nostalgic to me just because it's one of the first. I gave it 5 stars. I know it's not like the most perfect writing and everything's not fleshed out and stuff like that. But for me, the emotions and how I feel and stuff like that is just very nostalgic to me. Oh, it's Damon. I don't know if you can see it. So yeah, it was a really good reread. I did a read along back, I think in 2021, where we read the first 3 books leading up to like the 4th book, or the first 2 books leading up to the 3rd. I can't remember. So yeah, I've reread it quite a bit. It's just very nostalgic to me. I can't wait to talk about all the good.
All right. I was so nervous that I wasn't going to love it as much the second time, because I read this also like everybody else. Like, I had just finished ACOTAR and I was looking for more fantasy romance. And I just remember being like completely addicted to From Blood and Ash. Like, I had to finish it. And I still give it 5 stars. Like, I loved it so much the second time around. So I was actually very happy about that.
Yeah.
I actually think that I got to From Blood and Ash because of you, Jess. If I'm being
Oh,
honest.
really?
I think I came across some of your videos back then, and I was like, okay, yeah, I can read this.
I think I made
loved
like 5 videos about From Blood and Ash because I was like that obsessed at the time. So yay, I'm happy you read it because of that.
Yeah.
All right, so this was Jaylaw's first jump into fantasy romance. How do you think she did?
Personally, I think she did pretty good. I think that I actually am a fan of her writing style. Like, I think there's a lot of things that a lot of her descriptions are beautiful, I think. So I really enjoy that. I think I'm the only one that's not continued on in the series. So like I've only read the first book. So it's hard totally to judge world building when you've only read the first book, but I think the world building is pretty good, because if you look at it in this first book, you mostly only have the perspective of our main character, who we find out doesn't really actually know the truth of everything. So in that way, you're only kind of getting what she knows. So far, I think she does a pretty good job. And by the end, you're excited to see the world open up and get, hopefully, that world building. So I think she did pretty well. Yeah, I thought she did good.
Yeah, I think she did pretty well. I mean, when I first read it, I was like so surprised because I hadn't read that many fantasy romances. But now that I've read quite a bit, there's different ways to kind of open up a fantasy romance. You can either tell it from the perspective of one character, where, like in this case, it's Poppy. We're seeing everything from her eyes. We're learning everything as she's learning everything, which is obviously one way to do it. And then you kind of have the way where it's just kind of like you have all these different character perspectives. I want to say like kind of Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. You have all these different like point of views, and so you're getting the world from their points of view. I don't mind it this way, but I do know one of the big critiques of this is it's a lot of info dumping at the beginning. But that is, I feel like when you're first starting out with fantasy romance, or I don't read a lot of fantasy. I only read fantasy romance, but I've heard that if you come from fantasy, that is kind of like the new author way to do it. Like if you're new to fantasy romance, you just kind of just dump everything. So when I first read it, it took that first 200 pages was a lot to digest, because I was like, this is a lot going on. I'm trying to keep up with everything. But I think I read the whole series and then continued on with Ninitos and Serafina. I think that over time her writing gets better, but you can never go back and rewrite this book. So it's kind of just how it is. So I do understand that that's a big critique of it, but I personally didn't mind it because I love what she created, like at the end of the book, the second half of the book. So
I think I get so used to info dumping because of the amount of epic fantasy that I also read, that I only really get bothered. Sorry if you hear my kids in the background. I only really get bothered by it if it's like what I consider to be like extreme info dumps, right? Yeah. Like Naomi Novik's A Deadly Education, I feel like was like extreme. But so I don't know. I'm kind of like less critical about info dumps.
I think she was actually, sorry, Jess, you want to go?
No, go ahead, Isa.
Thank you. I think she was really smart. I think that she started this book like knowing that the story was going to be big and she at the beginning just shares some stuff, right? Like there's this Craven and there's some stuff, but she focuses the story in the castle, really. So we don't have a lot on the world that you need to build, because we follow the perspective of someone that does not know anyone, doesn't know anything beyond that part. So I think it was smart for her, like from her, because she started, and you can see it getting comfortable, right, with the world, and then you can see that over the last 20% of the book, it's like way more descriptive, and the world building, like the red forest, all of that stuff, like comes in later, and I think that she made it pretty good. Still, like, again, yes, there's, and I see it, not a great world building, because you're like, no, you don't know anything, and then you know stuff, and then you know too much stuff, and it's just like, what happened? But still, for me, it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad.
So I didn't mind the world building in the very beginning, but I think as the series continues, she kind of makes Poppy just like constantly question things in order to give the world, and like, I guess this really doesn't have to do with the first book, so I'll end it there, but that kind of annoys me in her writing. Like, we could have figured out like another way, more organically, to like give us the world, instead of Poppy just asking questions nonstop.
Yeah.
All right. So, my phone died. What were your overall feelings regarding the romance?
Oh, I loved it.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I'm really bad with names. Oh, I'm like, oh, the hero
I'm
or
Isa.
the main character. What?
I just said I'm Isa. Sorry, it was a silly joke.
I think that Hawk is kind of like my ideal like love interest in a book. He's big and tall and dark and strong, but like really smart. But then there's also a little bit of that like questioning, like what are his intentions, what are his motives, and yeah, I loved him.
I think they are very a good match, I think. So I love them totally, but I'm torn. I'm not sure why, but I just feel that as I love Hawk. I love him. And the first part of the book when he is the god, that part is just like perfection. And then how everything unravels with them, it's also pretty good. It's just maybe it's a little bit insta love, which I'm usually not such a big fan of. Like, it doesn't seem that way, but then I think that Hawk says something like, I knew from the beginning, some stuff like that. And I was like, aha, did you? And those parts, I'm like, okay, well, sure. But overall, I really liked it. Really, really.
He's definitely a very like immediately down like DTF for like anyone. Like when they first meet, he's just ready for whatever in the room,
Yes.
like no matter who she is. So that's he's not a good guy. You know what I'm saying? Like he's not.
I do like though.
Yeah.
I want to see his point of view. I do know she's writing a book from his point of view, and I hope it's this book. I'm pretty sure it's from Blood and Ash, but from his point of view.
Yeah.
The more times I reread, the more times I pick up on things. And this time I really picked up on him at the beginning, thinking that Poppy is going to be this maiden that's very not Poppy, not what we know Poppy as. Someone who's very meek and weak and just does what everyone tells her to do. You know what I mean? And then slowly we see, as he becomes her guard, this whole, oh, she goes out on the rise to fight. Oh, she sneaks out and does this. Oh, she reads Miss Willa Collins' diary. You know what I mean? Like, she's this complete opposite that what he thought she was going to be. And I think you can kind of see that towards the end of the book, where he was like, no, we're not killing her. No, we're not going to, give her, do this or do that. No one's going to touch her. No one's going to hurt her anymore. You can slowly see that transition for him, that he's like, oh, okay, maybe this is more than I thought everything was going to be as well. So I like to see, I see that this time. I saw that this time around when I reread it, more of that his kind of train of thought about her. I don't know if that makes sense, but.
And I think she released a few chapters
Oh.
from that book. I remember reading it a while ago, and I think it is when they meet. It was really
yeah. I think it was like four chapters. It was something really short. Yeah,
yeah, it was short.
I remember reading that. Yeah.
This commenter said the romance to that scene in Twist of Rhea and Kova with the knife, like true hate to love. First of all, I love that scene. Tori, have you gotten to that part?
I haven't gotten to it yet, but I do
get to it. It's really good.
I know that it's something like that. I do know that, but I'm planning on reading Twist next week, so I'm really excited.
Oh, Twist is the best. It's definitely the best in the series. I love the romance didn't move too fast, and I love seeing Poppy struggle with her emotions when he lied to her. Yes.
Yeah. I think seeing towards the end, the last 20%, where she is really struggling because she's like, did he mean to do, make me fall in love with him? Did he not do, like, what is this part of his plan? And I personally don't think it was part of his plan, but it just happened to work out that way. Because he saw her as someone totally different. But also it's one of those things where when she immediately stabs him in the heart, we're talking spoilers, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure. Like, when she immediately stabs him in the heart, she feels this like, what did I just do? I'm so sorry. And she immediately apologizes. And that's how you can really tell that there's something there that obviously develops over the next couple books. I don't want to say like how, but it definitely develops. And that's just my favorite part, where you see a character like with conflicting emotions that you get wrapped up into what they're feeling as well. It's my favorite thing.
And I didn't notice that until my reread, that she was crying when she did it. I think I was just like so wrapped up in the moment. I was speed reading. But yeah, I think that is like, she really does have conflicting emotions regarding it. English is not my native language, so the world building was very confusing to me. Can you explain the hierarchy, vampires, werewolves?
I mean, I've highlighted a lot of stuff. Be careful not to spoil anything. So
you have only read the first book.
I know. I'm trying really, really hard. Okay, so you have
Atlanteans,
which are they are the ones who make Craven. And Craven are like the zombie vampires. They just are. They don't really have they like transition. You see that with at the beginning of the book, where Victor takes Poppy to that person, the wife, and her husband is dying, and Poppy like puts him out of his misery, basically. And then you have the Ascended, which is who Poppy's brother Ian is, where they go to the capital, and where what Poppy is going to be ascended. She's at the end of this book, she's going to the capital so she can be ascended, and that's like intercepted by like Castiel's people and stuff like that. So I think that's it. The werewolves are what they say in the first book. Like with the Atlanteans, they're like bonded to them. They can be, but they're just like another faction of creatures that live. But we don't know too much in the first book, just because Poppy doesn't know too much about them. So I hope that was. I try not to. Okay. I don't want to spoil anything, because it obviously opens up a lot more in the next couple books, but
I think my kid just like, I don't know what he just did, but sorry, that was loud.
All good. All right, who is your favorite side character and why?
Just
Mine
is Victor. Sorry,
Victor.
Like, I think he steals the show. Like, I love the dad figure. Like, I don't have no one, but I have this figure that is taking care of me and that believes in me and that acknowledges that I'm not perfect, but at the same time wants me to become more. And he is defeating and, not doing whatever he's told, and he's training me. I love that. And I think, like, there are some scenes, of course, that are very emotional, but overall, I really, really like him. Just like there's this thing on why do you allow Poppy to go to her lessons, but that's the only thing that I have there. I also love Tony, of course, but Victor for me.
Yeah, I have
in
to
this book.
I have to agree. In this book, Victor is definitely one of my favorites. And I think the first time I read that scene where he's dying, I think I cried along. But I
It
do
is.
love.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
Victor is
she-
my favorite too.
I feel like Tawny adds this like comedy, like humor a little bit. It kind of like breaks up the seriousness of a lot of things that happens in this book.
I actually, I mean, yes, but at the same time, every time that she was in a chapter, it was followed by Poppy. I'm not sure if the friendship was real. And for me, that was so heartbreaking at the same time because it was like, I don't know either, Poppy. Like, I don't know. And you know, you can, for me, it's like, yeah, I am on the fence with her in those moments with Poppy. I mean, like, she is real. Just believe in her.
Mm-hmm.
He was never able to fully really connect with her because of that questioning, right?
Yeah.
So she didn't really question Victor's, allegiance to her. And so then I didn't either, you know?
What about you, Jess?
Victor was probably my favorite in this particular book. I think,
Exactly.
yeah, as we go through the series, I have other favorite side characters, but in this one, it was Victor. And that scene where he dies was heart-wrenching. Like, you just feel so bad for Poppy.
Mhm.
And then when she goes like bananas after
Oh, yeah.
the sword, like, oh my gosh.
I didn't remember that battle scene being so like bloody. I was going through it. I was like, wow, like this is like kind of intense.
Yeah.
Very gory.
Yeah. So I love Blood and Ash. I went into it not knowing anything. So when I got to the reveal that it had vampires, I was so shocked and couldn't put the book down. I also had no idea there were vampires in it when I started it.
I remember literally the first time I read this book, it was 1 a.m, and my husband was trying to go to sleep, and I had 30% left of the book, and I kept thinking, I'm like, Hawk is not Castile. There's no way. Like, there's no way this is the same person. Like, he's not the dark one. And I kept like repeating that. And my husband's like, put the book down. You got to go sleep. I was like, no, I can't do it. And I remember like sitting up in bed when all of that stuff was coming out. And I was like, like gasping. And he would like wake up and he'd be like, are you okay? I'm like, this book is crazy. Like, I just vividly remember my reactions. Oh, it was such a good like surprise.
So did you guys think, I guess you didn't, but do you guys think it was predictable that he was the dark one? Or was that like completely a surprise?
I think that if you haven't read fantasy romances, it's a surprise because now I can see the surprises when I read like a new fantasy romance just because I've read a lot of them. But because this is like one of the first ones, like in ACOTAR, all the stuff that happens in ACOTAR, didn't see anything coming. It's the same thing with this.
Yeah.
I totally agree. This was one of the first, well, not one, yeah. I think I hadn't read that many fantasy romance when I read this. I don't even know if I think I just finished the ACOTAR series at the beginning of the last year because A Court of Silver Flames was my favorite romance of the year. So yeah. So I think that I hadn't read a lot and I only really got into fantasy romance this year. Before that I read more like paranormal romance, like where each book in a series follows a different couple, you know what I'm saying? And so I was really surprised, but also especially by the reveal of it being like vampires and werewolves, you know what I'm saying? But looking back, I don't think I would have been as surprised if I read it today for the first time.
I didn't see it coming. Like I read it last year past, and I was buddy reading it with my best friend, and I was like, "Oh my God, like these happen! Like, can you believe these?" And she was like, "Yes, yes, I can." Like, of course, it was so obvious, and I was like, "No, it wasn't." And I was like, "Yeah, dude, it was super obvious." And I was like, "No." And it was like, yes, there were some mentions about the fangs. There was the thing that he has like just this one dimple. There was that he's super fast. He is strong. You know, it was there. And I was like, it was. So, but for me, it was like complete surprise. And even when you start getting like into the reveal. It took me like the proper line to tell me his name when I was like, oh. So yeah, for me it was a surprise.
I was your friend in that situation. As soon as they're like describing the dark blood, I'm like, that's the love interest. So I was like, I think I was already looking for that.
Yeah.
When it started, I didn't catch the dimples, like he wasn't smiling because of the bangs. But like Under the Willow, when he could see her and he had a lot of like supernatural abilities.
Yeah.
And I think at some point she keeps talking about like, oh, he moves like an Ascended. Like
Yes.
he's super fast. Like he's compared to them a few times.
He does.
That's true.
Like this time around, when I was rereading, I was like, I was dumb. Like it was here. It was here. But yeah, complete surprise.
But I was also binging fantasy romance at the time I read this. So I feel like I was looking for those things already. So I think, if you're not familiar with fantasy romance, you're not. It wasn't super obvious.
That's a good point. Should we talk about Victor's death? Because it was super sad.
It was super sad.
No.
Oh wow.
no.
That's the hard thing with fan art.
Yeah.
I'm always
I did
wary.
this
I always
too.
want to look it up when I'm reading a new book, but then I'm like, but should I?
Yeah.
I did this with ACOTAR, and I didn't understand why Farah was with not Tamlin the entire time when I was reading the first book. So I was like, wait, who is this person?
That's funny.
But yeah, Victor's death. I did not think that was going to happen. I did not see that coming. What was your reaction? Was it like, was that the saddest scene for you, or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think
From what I remember, I teared up a bit. I don't cry a lot at books, but I was hoping he would like continue on in the series, but
yeah.
Yeah, there's just some in this book. There's certain one thing I love about this series, like especially the first like 3 books, is Poppy's like character growth and like how she evolves as a young woman, especially like where she's come from and then where she gets to. And I think in this book there's just I feel like there's 2 pivotal moments: is Victor dying, which is another like it's her father figure in her life, the one that she's learned everything that she knows, how to fight and stuff like that. And then, of course, Hawk being Castile. And then her at the same time finding out that everything that she was taught really is totally different. And I think those 2 moments stick in my mind, especially with every reread, because I get so emotional because you can see how she changes as a person. I mean, she literally goes bananas and kills. Is it the Duke right after?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And not just I'm going to stab you because I want to put you out of your misery. It's I'm butchering you because you hurt me. Do you know what I mean? And she's like shunning all of that stuff away. And then, of course, learning everything she's battling with how she feels, because once again, it's someone that she thought was her friend or at least felt something for her. And now it's like supposedly this person that is the worst person in the whole world, that, the dark one that wants to take down everything that she knows. So yeah, I felt like those 2 were really like emotional for me, that I was just like, I felt for her.
Yeah.
Agree. And then also Ryland's death. I completely forgot about that. And then I'm reading it and I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot this character dies. Like, that was heartbreaking.
Yeah.
comes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
For me, it also, like, I thought that happened like way more at the beginning, or that he was like not super important. But in the reread, I was like, oh, well, Ryland is here for a while. Like, they are close. And it was saddest this time. But for me, Victor's death, it was not just that he is dying and that he is killed in this moment where everyone is dying and she has already been semi-traumatized by everything that she has seen, but the fact that she cannot ease his pain, that is the worst thing for me. Like, of course it's sad that he dies, but she not being able to do anything for him, and just him saying all the time, sorry, I failed you, please forgive me. It was like, no. Like, oh, bad. It was so sad. Like, that frustration, which at the time, it also seemed very relatable, right? Like, I like that, because it was like, yeah, I'm not sure how would I react if something that bad happened. So Yeah, I know, sure. For me, it was very emotional. Very, very.
It was. And then she is able, isn't it later when they're in that forest? She's able to heal the soldier and take away his pain as he's
Yes.
died.
Yes.
Oh yeah, that one got me because it was someone who was just going along with her journey that was trying to protect her, and she was like, "This is like the least I can do." You know what I mean? When he was like, "Mom," and I was like,
Oh my God, that
No,
point, I was
yes.
listening to the audio and I was at work doing paperwork. And when he says that, I just like started tearing up and I was like, oh no.
Yeah.
Also, was that a Princess Bride reference? The rats? Anyone else catch that? No one's watched the Princess Bride.
No.
There's rats of giant size in the Princess Bride, and they have to go through a forest. So I was wondering if
Those
that was,
giant rats in the Nutcracker, right?
yes,
They're not. No, they're mice.
same.
I don't know.
I think I was spoiled the first time I read it.
Mm-hmm.
Since you have read fantasy, either will be good. Doesn't like from Blood and Ash.
Yeah.
Is this answering another comment, maybe?
Oh, I think this is answering this comment. So as someone who hasn't read Avatar or From Blood and Ash, which do I start with? I am more a fantasy reader, like 98% into fantasy. If you can't tell by that picture, that is very much my husband. So that is why I skipped it. And also the spelling error. I think if ACOTAR is easier to get into. I think there is a lot of info to do From Blood and Ash.
I think also if you're a true fantasy reader, I feel like ACOTAR opens up very much like a fantasy, not a fantasy romance, especially the first book. So I think that depends on where you want to go. I feel like if you come from romance, fantasy, like From Blood and Ash is a good start because it's fantasy romance. If you come from fantasy, I think ACOTAR, because I feel like it's on the fantasy side.
I definitely, when I started ACOTAR, I was way more obsessed and I wanted to binge read the series. With From Blood and Ash, I read the first book and I wasn't going to continue until we were like, let's do this read along. So, I mean, I liked it. I gave it 4 stars, but I wasn't like dying to pick up the next one like I was with ACOTAR.
I actually joined a Facebook spoiler group just so I would know when the next book was coming out, The Kingdom of Flesh and Fire. I had a countdown. I was waiting for that book.
Oh, wow.
And it was funny, Jennifer L. Armentrout at the time, I didn't know she was the moderator. So like there was a bunch of questions and I answered like with ridiculous paragraphs. And then to realize that she read them is kind of like horrifying.
No.
Cool. No,
it's like she knows you exist.
Yeah, but still, I was like, oh, I didn't realize the author was the one that was like moderating this group.
That's funny.
Still think it's cool.
Thank you.
Oh.
What else do you want?
I think it's adorable that your husband's commenting and watching. I think that's adorable.
I've never seen Princess Bride, but I know it's like a really popular, kind of like a cult classic, right?
It is. It's you either love it or hate it. It's very like blunt comedy, but I really enjoy it. All right. Were there any other favorite scenes or impactful scenes that you guys liked?
I really liked the scene under the willow. I loved it like both times. The first time I was like, oh, this is so steamy, this is so angsty, like I love it. And the second time I was like, like I was audio reading it and I was like, no. And I think I'm like sitting down and reading that scene and savoring it. I think it's super good. Really super good as a scene.
I remember having butterflies when I read that scene the first time.
Right?
So yeah, I loved it.
That's so good. So good. Because afterwards, like everything gets way more complicated and Poppy, of course, has way more emotions to deal with. But as of this moment, everything is kind of like in a bubble. Like she's kind of like avoiding her feelings or whatever might come for her from the ascension. And she's just like, I want to leave a little bit. And it feels so naive. And Hawk seems also so restrained. And I don't know, it feels magical.
I agree. I also love the scene where they finally get together. That was great.
Agreed.
it was like this little bubble that they had out of all of this chaos that's happening, and they don't know what's going on of who's attacking the rise and all this stuff like that. But at the same time, it's like they have this under the willow little bubble that she can be just a normal 18. Is she 18? I think she's 18. 18-year-old girl that has like her first kiss, well, second kiss technically. You know what I mean? I felt like it was like that moment for her that she could just be normal for a second.
That's beautiful.
And then it kind of comes crashing down when they run into Victor, and he
He's like,
her.
I know what you were doing.
Yeah. So we all read the series. Hannah, what do you think? Question. Do you think Kira and Huck and Poppy will be a couple?
I've heard different rumors, and I've heard people being disappointed about the progress on that so far. I've tried to avoid it.
Yep.
Because I don't want to get like spoiled. But I've heard there was hintings from JLA that would be a thing, and I've heard that people have been peeved about it since. This is all I know.
It's a good place to leave it.
Yeah.
We'll stop there. Which one would you say has rich world building out of ACOTAR and FBAA? I'm really new to fantasy.
I think it's different. I feel like ACOTAR is very much, you have the human world, you have the Fae world. There's a border, you can cross into it, and you can cross back. With From Blood and Ash, it's totally new. I mean, Poppy in this book doesn't even have running water. So it's kind of like she has to kind of create this different kind of like thrown back to historical times where they live in castles type thing. So I feel like it's really hard to compare the worlds.
Yeah.
I don't know.
For me, probably ACOTAR. Like just what you were saying, right? Like it has a lot of elements from fantasy. So you have the portal fantasy, you have also different courts within the Fae. So there's also that part that it's very rich. You have, I don't know, like a lot of different things that, well, in the first book, you see this tournament kind of vibe, but then it progresses and you see way more of the world and the stakes got higher. And I think that world building, it's richer. Yeah, I think that then From Blood and Ash eventually gets there. Like we know more, but it's like you need to wait in order to see all of that, I think.
Makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think that with ACOTAR, there's a lot of more like political world building. And so far, at least with the first, like, and then we still knew even in the first book that there was different courts and stuff like that. We hadn't visited them or anything like that when you're looking at ACOTAR, but in this one, we only really know about the, where Poppy is, and then that there's also the actual castle where the queen lives and stuff like that. But other than, and you have less, I guess, general knowledge.
I agree. I think ACOTAR is feels more fantastical. However, I do think the companion series made the world building a little bit more complex, A Light in the Flame. So
agreed.
Yeah, I think as you go, it does become more like fantasy.
I also think she learned a lot from Blood and Ash.
Yes.
And she took a lot of like the critiques that some people had, and for The Light and the Flame, that series. What is the first one? A Shadow in the Ember. That's the one.
Yeah.
Shadow in the Ember.
She
There's not even a map, is there?
Not in the first one, I think. There is maps in other books, yeah.
Oh, okay.
This is really funny. This vlog is happening. He's reading ACOTAR, and I'm reading Sanderson Stormlight Archive. Is that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, you're reading Stormlight?
Way of Kings.
Wow.
Way of Kings.
I've read Way of Kings once. I'm going to read it again. I'm not really looking
I
for
read
it.
Way of Kings, and I was like, nope.
Yes.
Yeah.
Really? I love
Stormlight.
Stormlight. I hated Mistborn.
I
loved Mistborn.
I read Warbreaker. I read Warbreaker because my husband.
Did you like Warbreaker?
I did. He went through a whole a whole Brandon Sanderson. He's read all of Brandon Sanderson's books last year through graphic audio, and so he was like, "I think you should read Warbreaker. I think you would like it. It has a little bit of a romance." And I did enjoy that one. He wants me to read Mistborn. I just don't know when I'll get to it, but yeah.
I think you would probably like Mistborn. Like, there's like the main thing is a romance. Like,
yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
I love Mistborn. Way of Kings was a lot.
Oh my God, that was so much. After that, I was like, no, thank you, not for me.
No,
I think I got into romance. I was like, I can't do this.
But I also, the recent Stormlight book, Rhythm of War, was my least favorite, and I'm hoping he like makes up for it, but I feel like he's just repeating some character arcs and it's annoying me.
Yeah, that I can agree with. Like there are characters that are suffering the same things time and time
And
and
he
time
did
again.
that with Mistborn, which is why I DNF the third Mistborn, because I was like, and am I noticing a trend here? Like, is he just gonna keep is this what he does if like series get long? I don't know.
I mean, I think that he's preparing stuff because the arc of Stormlight Archive, the first arc, is gonna conclude with the 5th book. So I think he's getting there.
I think this comment's very true. It was hard to compare because Farah had more knowledge of the world than Poppy. So the amount of info we got was very different. Yeah, I think that's why in the beginning of From Blood and Ash, it feels so info dumpy because they're trying to give you all that information.
Yeah.
But I'm unsure as to, I mean, Poppy should know at least a few things. I mean, she's got to know about other cities and stuff at least, right? Like, no?
But she doesn't, right? Like,
very
she
sheltered.
really doesn't.
Because Farah, she's not even in the fairy side, and she knows more about the area that she's not in.
So it's one of those things as when you read the second and third book, you really get to see it touches on it in From Blood and Ash, but with Feyre, it was common knowledge of both worlds, the human and the Fae side. You know, they've had a war previously, and you know they established this boundary and stuff like that. But with From Blood and Ash, Poppy is so sheltered because she's the maiden, and she only knows what has been given to her. So the books that she's read has been basically like, I can't think of the word, but like vetted to where like, okay, you can read this and it's not going to tell you anything else besides what we want you to know. So it's a very much sheltered thing. And when at the end we see a little bit of it, she's like, this can't be true. What's happening? Oh, I thought it was this. Oh, I thought it was that. Like very much different. So as the series goes on, you get to see why the way things are. But it's for me, it's hard to compare these two series because you have two different. Feyre and Poppy are two different characters. Like they are strong and independent. Well, Poppy becomes that, but they're from the beginning, they're just too different for me to compare. I don't know.
It's almost like if you look at, this is probably like I mean, it's true, but like probably a weird thing. But if you look at almost like a child abduction, like, you know, the ones where it's like they're abducted and then they're like sheltered into not knowing, and they get like Stockholm syndrome, and then they're 20 years old and like escape and they don't know anything about the world kind of thing. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, it's almost like that, where it'd be like trying to learn about America through someone who was like abducted and kept in a basement for 15 years.
Have you read Lotus by Jennifer Hartman?
Yeah.
Have you read Lotus by Jennifer Hartman?
No, but I'm reading Near the Bone right now by Christina Henry, and it's making me think about that.
Yeah, Lotus is a contemporary romance. It's not really fantasy, but one of the characters, he is taken and abducted and put into a basement. It's only from a very young age. So it reminded me of that. That's why.
Okay. Yeah, but it's kind of like that because she has been taken in and she's purposely not supposed to know these things so that they can use her.
Yep.
Right. So
exactly.
She is kind of just like a victim or like a prisoner, basically.
Yeah. So this comment says, I feel like the hardest part for me to grasp about the first book was how bad Poppy was treated, even though she was the maiden and no one was willing to speak up. So this annoyed me about Victor because he obviously like loved her and treated her like that was his daughter. But then like, I think they said that like the Duke would like, I think he like whipped her or something, but he would like torture her and like Victor would just stand on the outside of the door like, and I know he couldn't do anything, but still that's like frustrating to see that.
I feel like I mean, I could be looking into this way too much, but for me, it's one of those things where it just shows that sometimes men can do whatever they want if they're in power. Do you know what I mean? No matter who the woman is. That's probably me. I don't know if that's what JLA meant it to be, but it's like, what could anyone do? The wife probably knew, the Duke's wife probably knew what was happening. She knew his tastes.
Yeah.
And I just felt like as much as Victor would want to do something, what could he do? Like, could he go in there and kill them? Then there would be all these repercussions. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So I feel like he would have
been killed.
Exactly. So, I mean, what Castile did, I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. But I'm also glad that Poppy got the revenge that she needed to after everything that she's been through.
I like the fact that she was able to kill one of her like tormentors instead of Castile going and doing it.
Yep.
It gave her a little bit more like power.
I feel like that really sets up how the next books are with them, you know?
Yes.
That's true. Yeah.
Just shows how they are.
I'm excited to read it because I'm like, it's so funny to be like the only one who's not read the whole series. But I think it's good because then y'all get to kind of like experience it for the first time through me, maybe a little bit.
Hearing
Totally.
your thoughts about some things is cool. Yeah. Yes, it is. Well, it's a prequel to From Blood and Ash, so it happens like thousands of years in the in the past. I think it is.
But I do suggest reading them if you're doing it for the first time in publication order, because I've been getting a lot of messages on Instagram since like announcing this read along. And a lot of people are reading all of the FBA books and then going into the prequel series. And
We're doing it in publication order, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Didn't mean to click on this when you first read. How did you pronounce this? Did any of you guys read the book physically?
Yeah, Penelope. I thought it was Penelope. How else would it be? Penelope?
Penelope.
He's trying to make fun of me. I said Penelf. I did.
Penelope.
I would have said Penelope or Penelef. I don't know. Sometimes if I see like a weird name in a fantasy book, I just like, that's that person. Like,
Yeah.
I am the person who mispronounces everything all the time, even normal words. So I thought it was Penelope, but I could totally see that being Penelf. You know, I probably at one point thought, oh, someone thought it was like that too. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Well, in English, it would be Peneleaf, technically, in English, right? But like, I don't think that's how it's pronounced. But I'm saying, like, if you were reading it from an English perspective, like an American English perspective, it would be Peneleaf.
Isa, how did you pronounce this?
I thought it was Penelope, like with the F, like Penelope. And but then when we got to Poppy, it was like, yes, I will take these. This is the name that I will replace.
Yeah, Poppy's way easier.
It's way easier.
I like this one. I read it as Penelolaf. But then I know some people that just read it as Penelope. Just
Yeah, that's how I read it.
Yeah, just a different spelling.
Like, just ignore the H.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
and I've heard also from like a lot of fantasy authors and fantasy romance authors, when people interview them and ask like, how did you want us to pronounce that? Authors often say, however you want. Like, you know, they're not too concerned with it. They'll say like, well, I kind of thought of it this way, but I could be wrong too when I wrote the book, you know, because it's a book. It's completely up to interpretation. And these are fantasy worlds. So who knows? I mean, it's not based on a certain language in our world. So who knows how they would be technically pronouncing these names.
JLA she started in, I think the later books, she put a
pronunciation guide. Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen a fantasy book do that.
She was very particular
Yes.
about how she wanted it to be. Yeah.
Question.
Wow.
So when I was reading, there's a scene where they're talking about when Lord Mazine and the Duke were like torturing Poppy. She blacks out, and when she wakes up, they both seem like they're drunk. Do you think they drank from her? Because that's where my mind went with that.
Ooh.
That's a good point. I didn't thought about it, but I
she
think
completely blacked out, and when she wakes up, she's like, they were acting weird, and I was like, oh my gosh, they drank from her, and I didn't get that the first time I read it.
I think
be
that's
wrong,
what I
but
gathered
you're right.
after I
No, no.
learned all the things I knew.
Out of the 4 times I've read it, I never would have picked that up. So I'm glad you said it because it makes sense. I just thought that they were drinking like after.
Yeah.
But that makes sense. I wonder if they used. Ooh.
Wasn't she not supposed to be drinking from until she ascended? Or no?
I don't think.
We didn't know
No one knows that Ascended drink from
drink blood. Yeah.
Yeah, no one knows that. Like they do, but like.
But I meant like, I thought also they were not gonna, like, I don't know. Obviously, she's not supposed to know that's what's gonna happen or whatever, right? But
Yeah.
I'm saying like, I would have assumed that if they were waiting for that, then why would they bother having her ascend to drink from her? Why wouldn't they just give it
Give it to the later books. You'll-
Yeah, I was about to
you'll
say,
read it.
just keep reading. It'll
Yeah.
explain it.
Sorry.
No, it's fun. I like seeing those questions because it's interesting.
That's true too. That's
Yes.
a very good point.
Now you have me questioning like everything, Jess. I'm like, that totally makes sense. I wonder though, do you know how when
That's
Castile
true.
can drink from her, he can heal?
I was just thinking that, but I think they probably can because they
Okay.
can also give pleasure when they bite. They just choose not to. So I think they probably just choose not to heal. Like I think they have, like they're capable of doing it.
Yeah, so it's either they bit her and then like healed her, or they might have like cut a part of her, like with a knife or something.
Well, her entire back was lashed, so they could have also just done something like that.
That's true.
That's
Also
so
for
disgusting, though.
Victor, I think also his thinking would probably be, at least I'm someone that can protect her if really big time needs be. And if I interfere right now and they kill me and then she's punished worse, I can't help her in the future if something really goes down, kind of thing. Would be my assumption. Well, if she had these lashes on her back, then
Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
they ascended can heal the bite marks, so they would have healed it before she would have noticed. But then that makes me think, like, what if you remember that girl that was in that room that
Yeah.
smelled like
Mhm.
she had bite marks?
yes.
Yeah.
So I wonder if someone like caught them and they didn't get to heal the bite marks. Maybe
It's
And I
possible.
would assume it was Lord Mazine, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
makes me want to like dig into JLA's brain. Like, why did you do that? Like, what did you mean by this?
Right.
Yeah.
When I met her at a Polycon, because I had her sign like this, I brought brought all of my like paperbacks, so I had her sign them.
Aw.
And I had like all these questions that I wanted to ask her, and then I just like blacked out. I was just like, I'm such a fan. I love you so much.
So relatable though.
Yeah.
That's what I did with Lucio Franco. I had like,
Oh.
I thought I was gonna say all of these things, and I just completely mind blank, and I was like, "Love books, you're great." Like,
She's adorable. I love Lucia. Oh my gosh.
oh, she was so nice. I was just awkward. Or they were so taken with their bloodlust and then shocked that ran off.
That's definitely
Yeah.
true. I can see that too. See, so many theories. I love it.
All right, so last up is the very last line is "We go home to marry princess." How did you feel about that?
I loved it.
I love it so much.
I really liked it, but I was also kind of conflicted. Like, wait, what? After all that? But like, I was more intrigued for sure. And I feel like I 70% liked it and 30% questioned why I liked it.
Yeah.
Fair.
I loved it the first time, but this time, I don't know, like knowing what happened made my read like more concern for Poppy. So every time I was like, oh no, Castile, you're not doing this to Poppy, my girl. So, when that happens at the end, I was like, she's going, in a way, she's going like from being trapped in one side to being trapped in another. Because as of now, like, yes, she has just acknowledged that she loves or that she really, really likes him, but it just feels as he's taking the decision for her, right? Like, this is the way in which you will remain alive and safe, and this is what we will do. And I think that she's getting there, but that the decision is made for her. And for me, it was like I was on the fence. Like, I love this. That is because I know what will happen. Because yes, of course. But at the same time, I was like, but she was just trapped in this castle, and now she's just trapped in this quest and with you. Which, yeah, she picked you. But I don't know. I wanted her to be more empowered, if that makes sense.
I think it follows with a line that happens in a lot of fantasy romances, which is where the heroine kind of doesn't get much of a chance to take control of her life. It's kind of controlled by the hero in the story, and they're kind of just almost in the passenger seat of their own lives, especially for at least the first half. And then oftentimes through that control that the hero has over the heroine's destiny, then the heroine eventually gains it, which is
Yeah.
like, let's think about that for a second. It's kind of problematic, but it's definitely a popular trope, I would say. I don't know if you call it a trope, a device, I don't know,
Yeah.
used in fantasy romance.
I loved it. I was so excited when I got to that part. But I'm interested how you guys felt. Like, did you feel like he was using her? Because there's so many times, even the first time that they're sleeping together, he says, just remember this is real. And like, I almost felt frustrated with Poppy for questioning everything because he stated so many times that like he really does love her or like her at this point.
I think knowing what we know about the other books, if I'm just taking this book,
Yeah.
as many times as I've reread it, like I said, you can see the progression of Castile or Hawk thought she was going to be this meek, weak girl that he can, use and control for his plan later on. But you see those little moments of, oh, she goes on the rise. Oh, she knows how to fight. Oh, she can do this. Oh, she can do that. Oh, she is not meek and she's complete opposite of that. I think slowly he starts to kind of fall in love with her or start to feel something for her. So obviously his plans change, like Kieran said, like, oh, his plans changed. But I think that, I don't know. I just, like, I want to say I'm frustrated, but it totally makes sense. Like, this is another person that has told her all of these things and then is completely it's completely different. She thought Hawk was one person. Now it's completely different. She thought that the world was this and it's completely different. So I don't blame her for questioning it. It does get a little annoying, but I don't blame her. Like, I understand where that questioning was coming from. Because if I was in her place, I'd be like, I don't trust anyone.
Right. It's a good point.
Yeah. Oh, yay. Hi.
Like, Victor has just died, right? Like, one of her main pillars is outside. Like, she is just acknowledging that she's outside everything, and she is probably going to this ascension, and then she knows a lot of stuff afterwards. So I think it's reasonable that she questions everything. I personally don't think that Castile is using her. Like, I think he says that at some point, like, I could have kidnapped you, like, at the beginning in the Red Pearl, and end of the story, like, this will be it. But I knew that you were different, and I kind of like made this huge mess because I wanted to discover and know more about you. So I think that proves that he is real. But at the same time, this time around again, I felt very frustrated and a little bit let down of him, like, when they are together for the first time and she does not know anything about the truth. I felt like super bad for her because it's like, it's not sensible. Victor has just died. You not having a direct hand on that, we're kind of like in the things, and I think she will discover it like now because it, because in 2 days, 3 days, what's his plan? And he's doing it now. And I think, like, it's the first time for Poppy, and it just makes this mark of not knowing what is true and what is not true. And he knows that, he acknowledged that will happen. So I think that's why he said, like, remember this is real. But I don't know, it seems unfair for her. They redeemed themselves, right? Shortly after. So I'm cool. But it felt like if it was done to me, I will not be cool.
Yeah.
Like, it was like, no, please. No.
But I think he understands he has to grovel a lot. Like, he has a lot to do in the next book and the next book and the next book to really show that everything is real. And I think one of the moments in this book that shows that is when he puts that person up against the wall. Do you know what I mean? He like nails them or something.
Yeah, I was gonna ask how you guys felt about that. Like, what he does to the people that attacked her.
I think it's a start for him to show Poppy, my plans have changed. I really feel something for you. No one is going to disrespect you. After everything that you've been through and everything I know that you've been through, no one's going to disrespect you anymore. So I think it's like a start of that transition.
I'm excited for the groveling.
Yeah.
I
am loving this comment because I feel like the same. Like, he being really understanding of her is like, yeah, totally respect you. It's like, okay, you are redeemed in my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where he understands that he screwed up, and he understands that things change, his plan has changed, and he has to show her that too. So it's a mutual understanding between Poppy and him that he knows he screwed up.
Completely.
Oh, yeah, very
Love
much.
it, Touch Her and You Die. Yes, definitely.
Oh yeah. Just wait till the next book. Oh, so good.
The next book is one of my favorites in the series as well.
Yeah, the third book is my favorite if I have to choose. I mean, it could change with this reread. I don't know, but right now it's the third book.
All right. Is there anything else you guys want to talk about?
Oh, I just really quick. Do you know in this book it's only from Poppy's point of view? Do you think you would feel different about the story if we got Castile and Poppy's point of view, or Hawk and Poppy's point of view, switching back and forth?
Oh yeah,
100%. Yeah.
Do you like it better, or do you think you would like it worse, or like not like it?
I like to get both perspectives, and you know, especially in a romance or in a fantasy. Basically, in any book, I prefer a multi POV if it's got fantasy elements. So, I definitely think I would appreciate it, especially with the confusion. And like, I am a not at all trusting person, like own issues, but I kind of, that's hard for me because I'm with her in all of her questioning. I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't trust that person. No, I wouldn't trust that person. I don't know. So I think it'd be more personally helpful for me as well, maybe.
I think dual POV would just completely change the story. So I actually am not sure if I would like it more or less, but now you know Hawk's motivations like going in. I just feel like it would really change like the overall story.
Yeah, maybe not for the first one, but maybe like for the second one, you know?
It does eventually become multi POV.
Oh, it does.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, then cool.
Slight spoiler.
That's not me. That's fine.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I think I would like the dual point of view. I think that it would have been more complex because like she wanted us to discover the truth at the end. So it will always be like, is Castile like not sharing a lot on purpose? And I'm not sure, but it definitely will get rid of all of these. Is he cheating? Is he like a guy that likes every girl? That kind of vibe, that he is bad in times. I think it will get rid of that. But
I think also there's a way to do a do a POV where that person doesn't reveal the secrets you don't want them to know. I mean, I've read so many thrillers where
I agree.
The main character, the perspective that you're reading is actually the killer and you don't know. You know what I'm saying? So there's ways to do that. I think she could have. I don't know. I mean, that's author's choice, but I mean, she could have done it without revealing the truth of the matter. It would have been more difficult.
Yeah. I'm excited for Hawk's point of view just because I love him so much. But
yeah.
Agreed. Yeah. I think that's releasing in it might be this year.
Yeah, it's in June, I think. June or July, I thought.
Yeah.
Is that the one that we're leading up to? Is it? I thought it was a novella that no?
A Soul of Ash and Blood? That's what we're leading up to, yeah.
Yeah, that's Hawk's point of view.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then she has another one, I think, in October, which is the spinoff, I think. Or November. It could be totally wrong.
She announced like 4 different books, I think. Yeah. And then, we're going up to the first release.
SJM needs to take some notes because I'm waiting.
I'm not looking forward to recapping Crescent City too, so she can take all the time she needs.
Yeah, I will be looking forward to that video because I'm not rereading that book. Well, I don't know. I don't know.
I'm not rereading it. I'm watching a recap. I'm not making a recap. I'm watching a recap. Also, though, Crescent City is not my favorite. I prefer the ACOTAR series.
Yeah, I have conflicting thoughts.
Yeah.
All right. So, anything else about From Blood and Ash before we call it? Nope.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks everyone that joined us. I hope you guys come. The next live show is for Kingdom of Flesh and Fire on Tori's channel, and that's March 4th, I believe, at 2 p.m. EST. All right.
Yay.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Yay.